All right, guys, welcome everybody to Coin A Geek, the podcast. This is Elliot. I am going to be joined here shortly by a good friend of mine. What's up, Federal Spore? Thank you for popping in. Excited to have my friend and former, what would we call it, parishioner at Apologia. The man, the myth, the legend, the beard, Mr. Marcus Pittman, King Ginger. What's up, Marcus?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Thanks for joining me. What you been up to, dude? What's life been doing for you lately?
Me and the wife moved to Idaho, up here in northern Idaho, got away from the heat of Arizona.
Just the right time too, right?
Yeah, it was driving me crazy, and so we got up here, and we're starting our own company called Loor, which is a streaming platform for independent filmmakers.
Dude, that's awesome.
And a sort of safe space for cancel culture is what I'm saying.
That's great. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited to get into talk about that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But so we already got some people popping in chat. But yeah, man. So last time that you were on was probably a couple of years ago, and that was when Daniel was still doing the show with me regular. We were in studio, and I think we were just talking about gaming and whatnot. We could talk about gaming too, but for those of you guys who are maybe new to the channel, this is predominantly where I stream the gaming stuff. But my hopes is to have more people like Marcus on who are Christian and who are Christian content creators. Now, just for those who may not know anything about you, and maybe they do know this, maybe they don't, but I'm just going to tell like a personal story. So I remember when Apologia first started. I've been at Apologia for over 10 years now. And when we were doing, was it Redemption Radio? Is that what it was called before?
It was called Redemption Radio at the time.
Redemption Radio, right. And so what they did was Apologia, Jeff and Luke rented a space in like Arcadia in Phoenix, and they would do their show and they would broadcast it live. And, I remember Sai was coming on, they do interviews like that. Well, even when we were pretty small, I remember we had the God and Government Conference. And it was the first time that I had met you. And this was, I think, post after we had seen Babies Are Murdered Here, the first one. You come down and you spent all that time with, I remember the big spread of alcohol in the backyard. I was like, oh my goodness, like everybody's talking about God. So we had dinner. We had this great, who was it? Who's the dude from American Vision? I can't remember his name.
Joel McDermott.
Yeah, Joel McDermott came down and he made some barbecue, and then we all kind of chilled out. And then that was the first time I saw you there. But that was pre you coming out to Apologia. So talk a little bit about like how you came on board with Apologia and like how did all that transpire?
Yeah, so I made Babies Are Murdered Here, and that sort of got Jeff's attention and whatnot. And then I was doing stuff with American Vision at the time. And so that's when we did the GCC conference, God and Government Conference. And we went out there to the conference, and first time I met Jeff, I was on the radio show. It was Apologia Radio at the time that I got on.
Okay.
So I was on the radio show a few times. And then after the conference, I got to talking to him, and I was saying that, hey, you're spending way too much money at the, for a radio station. You could just, for the cost it takes to rent the radio station for 1 month, you could buy the equipment and just do it yourself. And so that has got us talking and about, if we did it, we could film it and put it on YouTube and all this other stuff. And then that's sort of how that came around. And then, it was just a matter of a few weeks. Like he called me and was like, okay, time to move down. And so I just packed up everything I had in the car and like just drove out here. And that's how, and I was there for like 5 years. So
yeah, drove from Virginia.
Yeah, from Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people about your driving experiences? And
No, it was actually I'm good on the interstate. Like I'm
okay.
On the interstate.
I was going to say, what I know of you.
Stoplights. It's all the stoplights and
the
light rails in Arizona.
The light rails.
It gives me a tough time. So
I'll let you can tell that story if you want. I won't embarrass you.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously happy that you came down. And now I should back up a little bit because you did talk about Babies Are Murdered Here. That is a documentary that was done in 2012, 13?
Yeah, we did that. I think 2012 or 13. I don't remember. We at least started filming in 2012 for sure. And so like that was actually one of the co-founders of Loor, John Speed, invited me to his church to film sort of like a promo video for his church plant.
Yeah.
But he accidentally got the plane ticket for like Sunday morning instead of Sunday night, like AM. He got the AM instead of the PM time. So I couldn't really film his church service at all.
Yeah.
So we decided we'll just film him doing abortion clinic ministry. And that's when one of the guys we were with, Robert Gray, made a sign that said "Babies are murdered here." That's actually hanging at the Apologia studio office, the original one. And so he made that sign. And I was like, oh, that'd be a really cool film, like to interview all these people that did. I've never made a film before in my life. So I was like, yeah, I'll just make a film. So, and so so we started filming that. And then, of course, during that time, we started working with American Vision. And then we did How to Answer the Fool and a few other documentaries. And then, I moved back to Virginia. And then while I was in Virginia, I finished editing it. I kind of forgot about it, and I finished editing it. And we raised only like $5,000 to make the whole movie.
Wow.
And then so we made the movie, and it went nuts. Actually, the trailer went nuts.
Yeah.
It was the trailer that forced everybody to like start making their own signs, and then the film became about all these people that are holding these signs. So it was just this weird, strange thing, and it forced Planned Parenthood to make a sign that said "Healthcare happens here."
Yeah.
In response to the "Babies are murdered here" sign. So that was pretty great.
That's amazing.
Anytime you can take $5,000 and force the hand of $1 billion slaughterhouse, it's good.
That's a pretty good rate of return, and not to mention, obviously in a very serious note, all the people that have been impacted by those movies. And then, the one that you followed up with recently, babies are still murdered here. And we can talk a little bit about that too. But so you said you had never made a film before. That was kind of part of what I was going to ask you about. Like, did you not have any desire to get into film? Like, what was your first foray into filmmaking?
Well, no. So my first foray into filmmaking was, I was a summer camp counselor at a Bible camp.
Pardon my soup eating, by the way.
No problem, man. I was a Bible camp counselor at a summer camp. And then the second year, the camp director asked if I would be willing to film all the campers and make like a video each week of their experience at camp. And I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. Just do a quick highlight reel. And like, I worked my butt off. It was nuts.
Oh, wow.
Like I had to be up before all the campers, and I was like last to bed. It was just like 5-6 days a week, like just all summer. It was nuts. And the stuff I made was absolutely awful. Like it was the way, like I look back on that, so I was like really, like I had no idea what I was doing. But like, it was like a superhero theme. So like we took, like I knew about green screen, but I had no idea how to execute it. So we took like a green cloth we got at Walmart from the fabric section, because like the country Walmarts always have the big fabric sections.
Oh yeah.
And so we found like the greenest cloth, and we hung it up in the gym, and then we used like the rope repelling wall cables and like one of the big gym fans. And we made it like a guy was like flying, and then we just like drove around the camp with the camera in our hands, and we like made it look like he was flying through the camp.
Oh, wow.
It was so dumb. And but I took that video of the stuff I did that summer, and my mom said there was like a production assistant job at like the local government school TV station that we had. So I took my reel in there, and just by happenstance, the people who were running the school TV stations were Christians, and they were like, "Oh, they just told me, they're like, you have no idea what you're doing." So they're like, "You have no idea what you're doing," but like, there's obviously some creativity there with the stuff you did with like no budget. Yeah. So they gave me an internship, and that's how I really learned how to do like the basic stuff. And from there, I worked. I was able to somehow get a job with Wretched that lasted like 3 weeks. I've said that before. Like,
oh wow,
I was fired pretty much immediately because I just wasn't good.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, and I just sort of got these random jobs and with no real like knowledge of what I was doing. And
Okay.
so that caused me and Chocolate Knox to become really good friends. And then I eventually moved into his. He had like a sort of like in-law suite at his house, and I moved into the in-law suite. And we started making content together, and then that's how Babies Are Murdered Here started. How to Answer the Fool, Symposium on Revelation, like all these documentaries that we made, sort
Yeah.
of came out of that time we were there. And never had any idea what I was doing, and I think that's just the best. Just it's always best to not know what you're doing. So yeah, that's sort of how I got into filmmaking and stuff like that. So
Well, that's cool, man. And so that's interesting you say that. So you didn't go the whole film school route. So just a little on the side, when I graduated high school in the year 2000, I really had a strong desire to want to get into film at that age. But and I hadn't done really anything. I just sort of made home movies and stuff like that, but I really liked film. And so my idea of making film was like, well, I need to go to such and such college and learn how to do things this way. And this was before the advent of all the technology that we have nowadays, right? Before even digital editing was a thing. So I kind of fell out of it. I think I lost interest because I just didn't feel like, oh, now I can actually do this. But you're sort of proof positive in some ways that the technology exists these days, and if you have a vision, that you could do something like that. Would you agree with that statement?
yeah, I would. In fact, I worked a job where I had to hire people. This was like during the time that I left Apologia for about 8 months. I worked a job and I had to hire people, and I actually put the people that went to film school at the bottom of the list.
Oh, really?
One, they wanted too much money, and two, their stuff was awful.
Yeah.
They just expected a job because they had a film degree, and their stuff was just really terrible. And then the people I did wind up hiring were the people that just didn't have any film school experience, but sent me like really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And they were cheaper, and and they were better. So it's just like that's just how the market works. So you can't teach someone to sing no matter how much school they go to. Like you can't give them, if they're tone deaf, they're tone deaf.
Yeah.
And the problem with film school is that it allows people who have no skills whatsoever to at least get a passing grade.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work in the real world. It doesn't work in the real world.
Yeah. So, kind of like some seminaries, right?
Right.
Not everyone is.
Well, yeah, right. Absolutely. Right. So.
Well, that's cool, man. So then fast forward here, we're coming back. And so now Babies Are Murdered Here is complete. You got the job. And then talk about how you built, and this is my perspective as somebody who went to the church, but has seen it from the outside. How did you build Apologia Studios? What was your vision, and how did you take it from where it was, which was essentially nothing, to where it was when you handed it off?
Carmen,
yeah. I remember a bunch of 12 and 13-year-old kids operating really expensive equipment. I'm like, oh, Marcus better know what he's doing.
Yeah, there's no way I could have done it without Carmen. Everybody asked me. I did it with Carmen. It was all Carmen. No, I think one of the things with that helped Apologia really launch was the fact that none of us had experience in Christian television and didn't want experience with Christian television. And so that sort of made Apologia be just authentic, and whatever it was.
Right.
Like there wasn't any, there wasn't even any rules really. I mean, I remember we got placed on NRB, and they said, oh, you have to give us some sort of metadata that's tells people to watch. And so I said something like, so I was thinking, well, if people are searching for stuff, we should use like keywords of like popular people that people search for. And I just said, well, so I put in the description, you should watch Jimmy Fallon and Oprah instead. Don't watch the show. It's awful. Like that's what was like in the Apologia. Like if you're going through DirecTV through the TV guide, like that's what you would see.
Yeah.
And
and
like the NRB network got all these emails from old people that were like, oh, I think you guys got hacked because they're telling you not to watch this show and all this stuff. So like, no, we just had no idea. We didn't care about any of the rules. I think that's what made Apologia so great. It was just like we just did whatever we wanted. you
Yeah.
know, like going into a cigar lounge and filming an interview and like those sort of things are stuff that Christian television didn't do.
Yeah.
And so I feel like Apologia really like they broke a lot of rules
Sure.
that were established, and that's what made them successful. But when you look at the history of all these companies, even like MTV and Nickelodeon, like if you read like some of the books on
Mm.
how those networks were founded, like nobody knew what they were doing.
Right.
So like nobody had any idea how to build a cable network.
Sure.
Cable was brand new, and so like the MTV guys came in there and said, "Well, we don't want anybody with television experience." Like
Yeah.
that was like their rule for hiring people. If you have television experience, like they didn't hire you. They did look for people who was in the music industry.
Okay.
Uh, but nowadays, if you try to get a job at MTV, it's not that way anymore, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so they want all the people with TV experience and stuff. But like back in the day, that wasn't that they just were just really rebels, and that's what caused them to win. And I think
Yeah.
the same is true of Apologia. Like they were just rebels. Well, one of the things, you know, I don't like we haven't talked about this a lot, but one of the things Apologia really did that no one has done since is like I think we really pioneered like doing stuff live,
Sure.
like the live Mormon stuff we did,
Yeah.
the live abortion clinic stuff we did. Like that was at a time, even like next week, like that was at a time when nobody was doing stuff live on Facebook. Like
Sure.
nobody was doing, and that was before Facebook hated it, hated it when
Yeah.
you did do live stuff. And
Sure.
so, you know, now like you could barely get 50 to 100 people to watch a live stream. But
Yeah.
at the time we were doing it, man, Facebook was just like they didn't care, and you were getting like 700 to 800 people, thousand. I think our record was like 2,800 people.
Oh,
I think
wow.
that was for Babies Are Still Murdered Here. I think when we premiered that, so that was, I mean, that was pretty miraculous because of just you know how YouTube suppresses. Facebook was suppressing abortion stuff back then.
Sure.
So just like the fact that we had that many people watching our stuff on live back before YouTube, Facebook figured they should suppress it. Like that was pretty tremendous, and still like nobody's done live stuff like live evangelism and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and part of that's to Jeff's credit of saying, well, look, I don't care if like people cuss on the stream, like
Sure.
that's how evil people are.
Yeah.
Just let
Yeah.
them be evil on stream, and like that's something a lot of the major ministries, even the good ones,
Mhm.
like Ligonier or something, would never do. Way the Master
Yeah.
would never do that. They would want to edit everything down, and like so doing stuff live. I don't even think they even go live from Ray Comfort's phone,
Is that
right? Like
right?
they don't. Yeah, like I've never seen them do a live video from their phone, and so I think like, but that gives like a real authenticity, and I think it helps people want to do it themselves because they see that like there's no editing. There's no editing, and so I think that's really what made Apologia what it is just the authenticity, and to Jeff's credit, just to be that authentic self, and you know, so
Yeah. Well, and so with that said, you're kind of, like you said, you're sort of pioneering a path here, something that, you know, not many people, if any people, like you said, are doing whatsoever. So then how do you continue to provide the kind of content that you know is going to be um, helpful to the church, and maybe hopefully helpful to those, you know, that maybe are non-believers, the ones that you're targeting, that they'll be saved, they'll see this, and they'll be saved. How do you continue to put that out over the course of 5 years, and then also expand and continue to stay relevant? Because so many, I feel like a lot of these trends that we see are, okay, well, everybody's hyped up about this thing for, you know, 5 minutes, but the end abortion now in particular, the whole abortion movement, I really feel like has just continued to get bigger and bigger. And so is that those types of ministries and your use of social media, and especially nowadays, which we can get into later, how are you able to maintain that as you go forward in the future?
uh, specifically with Loor or Apologia specifically.
Yeah, well, stake it on Apologia for now. Like, you know, you're looking at the time that you were there, and you were able to take this thing that was sort of new, right? And it kind of had the shiny new, pioneering type of sense to it. How do you maintain that relevance then over the course of time? That was a dumb way to ask it, but yeah, that's
No,
what I'm getting.
I get it. So I think what's important for any ministry is really to look at the technology trends
Mm,
and they go there first. So like that's like the key thing. Like when we were doing live streaming, we bought that little tear deck of device, and we invested money in like the ability to like live stream from a Wi-Fi hotspot. And nobody was doing that, man. Like the only reason I knew it was possible was because I saw that there were local TV news stations that were doing it. Right.
Okay.
And I was like, well, if they're doing it, there's got to be a way to do it. And whether they had like the satellite truck, I was like, well, maybe they have a satellite truck. And then I just did like a 5-minute Google search and was like, oh, you don't need a satellite truck. You just need like $50 a month for a Wi-Fi hotspot.
There you go.
This $1,000 device. And so I told Jeff, I said, it was before we were doing the first abortion clinic evangelism.
Okay.
I said, I have this crazy idea that we just do it live. Like we just go out there
do it
and
live
to Facebook and like not through I was like, not through a cell phone, just like through a nice cinema camera with a wireless device so I can be like 100 feet back. Like, let's just do it. And Jeff's credit, he was just like, well, just buy the stuff you need. And we did. And like that's what happened. And, there was, we realized that, when you have 10,000 Mormons in one spot, the cell phone reception isn't that great. But we used it for abortion clinic ministry, and we used it a whole bunch with that. I mean, Apologia still uses the live stuff that was started. So, but it was like at a time when nobody was doing it.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is that more people haven't done that. Like that's not for a ministry like say Legionnaire or especially, I mean, more specifically Way of the Master, because that's what they do. Like for those ministries to not have like capitalized on that yet is like pretty tremendous. Like,
why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it is just the lack of control you have when you're live, right? Like in terms of like framing how your ministry is presented and stuff. And so, I mean, like a lot of that's good. Like a lot of that's branding, right? So you don't want to like ruin your brand. And like, if your brand is built on like cleanliness and precision and that sort of thing, then like, you don't want to risk it with like a live stream.
Yeah.
But if your brand is built on just raw authenticity, like Apologia's is, then like, I mean, that's just like, it's on brand to go live. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And the other thing too is like to understand that we're Christians and we're going to sin publicly at times. And just to embrace that, knowing that, hey, look, if we sin publicly or whatever, we can just always apologize or take the video down and repent. Right. So just like having that sort of knowledge, a lot of people don't have that.
That's interesting. You say that. Sorry to interrupt. But yeah, you're hitting on something I think, which is interesting in general. What you guys were doing, and it was new, and it's still not done very often. And
is that you? Do you need to leave?
My wife's out there. Smoke alarm. We have a very sensitive smoke alarm.
Should you go protect your wife right now?
It happens all the time.
Okay.
No, we're good. Okay. Why you gotta put me on blast like that?
Sure, man.
No, I think we're okay. It stopped. Yeah. So having that happen, then do you think, well, how was I going to phrase this? And we're still not seeing, boy, oh boy. There, give me 5 seconds. I will be right back. Oh, now it's coming through my headphones.
See, authenticity of a live show, man.
All right.
The authenticity of a live show.
Talk about whatever you want. I'll be right back.
Okay. So I'm just going to just continue this conversation. If anybody is watching, hopefully, Elliot's house doesn't burn down, but you can go to loor.tv, LOOR.tv, and you can join the email list if you want to be caught up on everything that's going on. Hello to everybody in the chat. Everybody in the chat should subscribe to Elliot's channel if you haven't already. I wonder how long I can plug this. Like, how many plugs? Is he sponsored by Ridge Wallet? Is he sponsored by by a VPN? Is there a VPN that Elliot is a sponsor of that I can plug right now? Because I'll do that too. I could read your chats. So he's not coming back. I'm really worried. Okay. Good, man. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're back. I was just wondering, like, if your house is burning down, I imagined that
It'd
we
be
would see
great. It'd be
smoke
great.
before the internet connection got burned down.
Yeah.
So.
The last days is a bit like I'll tweet, like, have it on Twitch. My house burning down. That'd be great.
Yeah, I just plugged Ridge Wallet and NordVPN. I didn't know which one you had, so I was just like, whatever sponsors.
I have no sponsor, so it's all good. You're my biggest sponsor so far.
Okay.
I did have a guy named. Do you know Doug TenNapel? Does that name sound familiar?
I'm familiar with Doug.
You're very familiar with Doug?
I'm very familiar with him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, he was on the show a few months ago. That was fun. That's fun. You're like the next biggest guy that I've had as far as in terms of notoriety. But so
pretty big.
Yeah. It was a good show. Yeah. That was all Daniel that hooked us up with that. I saw a picture with him and Darren Doan, and I was like, oh, these two know each other. That seems about right.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I forgot where we left off, but I was asking about we were talking about the fact that churches aren't utilizing technology maybe in the same way that Apologia started to and is still doing successfully. In fact, I think back in the day, when Apologia was still, like less than 100 people would be like, oh, I heard Jeff, he came and he preached at, Cornerstone or something. And we heard that sermon. And now almost, I would say 90% of the time, it's something having to do with a video that you guys made. Like, I was searching for a video on how to witness to Mormons. I was searching for a video on, abortion or whatever it is. And then they, you go down the YouTube rabbit hole, you end up watching all these videos and it's like, oh, I didn't know this church was here in Tempe, and they start coming. So with that being said, do you feel as though, we talked a little bit about on brand, but do you think it benefits, or it would benefit some of these churches to get out and do more of this, to put aside the idea of brand for the sake of getting this type of ministry out there?
Well, I think it would. I mean, I think the problem is most churches are not doing it at all, right? Like most churches are not using technology, either like only maybe they might record their sermons and upload it to Sermon Audio.
Yeah.
Or they might live stream their sermon from like someone's phone who volunteers in their audience, right? But like that's like to the most that most churches will do it, but it's not an expensive investment in comparison to other things.
Yeah.
The amount of money that a church will spend on a projection setup to be able to broadcast the words on the screen is way more money than it would cost to, be able to do like pretty substantial, like live streaming and stuff like that. But the problem is, you need people that are willing to do it, but the main problem is that like a lot of churches just aren't doing evangelism anyway.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's a whole nother hurdle, like just tremendous hurdle just to get over. I mean, and a majority of churches are closed now. So there's very few churches that are even meeting
Sure.
normally.
Yeah. So, well, that kind of brings me to one of the things that's been on my mind is that, I don't think we see many people broadcasting because, as you said, there just aren't a lot of churches doing this. And so they just aren't doing evangelism, period. Why do you think that is? You can make it as broad or as narrow as you want when it comes to that.
Why they're not doing evangelism?
Yeah. Like even, I mean, maybe not necessarily even the kind that Apologia does, but just in general. I think every church should have some form of evangelism. Would you say?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of churches have evangelism in different ways. So that's good.
Yeah.
But then there's, when you talk about church just in general, like evangelicalism, they just don't have the theology to be able to back the importance of evangelism. Whereas they think evangelism is just evangelizing the people that are in their church. And so that's when you get like the seeker sensitive stuff and all that other garbage within Christianity. But like the Reformed churches, a lot of Reformed churches do evangelism. And you don't have to film it. Like,
Hmm.
it's good to do evangelism and not advertise it. And
Sure.
so it's not something that needs to be done. But I think, like, if you're talking about really, just becoming like a prominent in your community, I think you have to use the tools and technology that God has given you. Like, it'd be crazy for people within the church, back in the 16 or 1700s to say, "Oh, we don't want to use that printing press." That's
Right.
crazy,
Right.
right? Like, that'd be crazy. It's like, but Christians latched onto the printing press because they saw it as a valuable tool immediately, and so that sort of really pushed Christianity forward. The fact that there were so many Christian books, and then now Christian books publishing is done by hashtag Big Eva, and so you don't have a lot of Christian publishing that's really taking place uh, outside of those categories, or even if you
Sure.
do have publishing that takes place, they don't get all the attention as the ones that Big Eva promotes. So
Yeah. So with that said, then, I mean, so we're talking about technology. We're talking about the impact, and Babies Are Murdered here. Both of them, both the original and Babies Are Still Murdered here, has had a global impact in terms of the exponential growth of those films, as well as the work done in Apologia and spread it out. When we come back to the idea of Christians in media, and I'm going to transition this into Loor, but I want to kind of know what your perspective is in terms, and like, how does your theology drive your perspective on how Christians need to be involved in media in general?
well, I'd say we need to own it.
Mm. Yeah, the
We need to,
dominion, man, right? Yeah,
yeah, we just need to own it. Like, most of media nowadays, well, everything you watch, whether it's Netflix or Disney or whatever, uh, pretty much everything that you ever watch is only from 8 people in the United States.
oh
Right?
wow.
There's 8 people in the United States to decide what shows get greenlit from a network.
Hmm.
So it's very, very, very limited. And your Christian shows are not part of that deal.
Mm.
Like, they're not. And if they are, it's because your shows are weak.
Yeah.
And they don't feel they don't feel like your show is a danger to their worldview,
Mm.
right? So
That's
it's
good.
it's miraculous that Netflix has American Gospel. It's
Yeah.
hidden. It's never featured on the front page of Netflix. You'll never see it. You have to know it's there to find it. But it's still miraculous that it's even on there.
Yeah.
There was a Young Earth documentary that was on Netflix, and so every now and then they give Christians a bone, but it's not enough to make you think that it's not enough to force to be a threat. It's not enough to be a threat to them.
Hmm.
So everything right now is controlled, and media is controlled by gatekeepers.
Hmm.
And so whether that's Big Eva or whether that's like big streaming, Netflix, Disney, CBS, Universal, all those sort of companies, they determine what you watch and they put forth the worldview that they want you to have, and they're not about to risk that worldview
Hmm.
for Christians. It's just not going
Yeah.
to happen. But they will make you think that they care, because they don't want to just outright come on and just lose 50% of like their audience. They don't want to
Sure.
cause a big stink, but they will pretend.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where we've been, is just, they're feeding you a bowl of rice with maggots in it, and you're just so thankful because you're hungry, and you're just like, oh, this is
Yeah.
great.
Sure.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm so happy for this bowl of rice.
So over time, I grew up in a Christian home. We watched a lot of focus on the family kind of stuff. I grew up on shows like McGee and Me. I don't know if anybody remembers that, or the Bible Adventures, like cartoons that we had growing up, when it was just like, oh, there's these 3 people and they transport back in time and they go through all the Bible stories. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Dude, Bible Adventures was amazing.
Yeah. And it's probably even still, I haven't watched one in a long time, but I was like super entertained by it as a kid.
well, not Bible Adventure, it was Superbook, right?
No, I don't think I watched Superbook. It was the one where it was like the funny thing is I remember all the music and I remember even the opening, but I cannot remember the name of the show. I think it was called like Greatest Adventures from the Bible. It was like Derek, Margot, and Moki, and it was like three people, and they fell into this like pit, and it's like there's this door, and it opens, and it's a time traveling thing, and they basically travel, and they go to all these different Bibles, famous Bible stories.
A lot of those shows were done by Focus on the Family.
It was Hanna-Barbera. It was like the same.
It was Hanna-Barbera, really?
Yeah.
Hold on, I have to Google this right now.
All right, yeah, you got to find this
because I want to know who's licensing it. Hanna-Barbera.
Oh, the Greatest Adventure Stories from the Bible. Yeah.
The Greatest Adventure. Oh my goodness.
Have you never seen these? Like, I have a whole shelf full of these at my parents' house.
Well, I probably did, but I didn't realize it was Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah. Some of them are a little risque too. I mean, I don't know. Maybe or maybe not click on that Adam and Eve one.
I do remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I for sure at least remember the VHS tapes.
Yeah. I was like every Christian home that I knew, like that I would go into, if they had kids, they had these on the wall, and we grew up with them as well. So I grew up with a lot of those. For better or worse, it kind of.
I remember that dude with the hat. Sorry,
yeah, no, it's
like
good.
Nostalgia feels now.
Maybe I could pull this. Let's see if I can do a screen share here. I'm messing with this thing.
Yes.
Let me see. Technology. Oh, whoa.
There we go.
Can you see it on my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. So these, the creation, Samson and Delilah. I had all of these pretty much. Queen Esther. We don't want to talk about the miracles of Jesus, the 2CV stuff. But yeah, man, I had all this stuff, and I remember very vividly watching some of these.
See, the problem is this stuff is probably owned by Ted Turner right now, because I think he owns all the Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Oh, does he?
He probably threw that in a vault, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
He hates Christianity, so I don't know if, man.
I lost where I was. Oh, here I am. Okay.
Yeah, that is a nostalgia flashback right there, man.
Yeah, dude, that takes us back.
But so most of the stuff I grew up with was the Focus on the Family stuff, which was Adventures in Odyssey.
Yeah, Adventures in Odyssey.
And then Superbook. I think CBN owns Superbook now.
Okay.
So Adventures in Odyssey, Superbook, and then they had this show called McGee and Me. Do you remember McGee and Me?
McGee and Me with the ball that comes down at the beginning, and he's got the cartoon friend. The Fight Before Christmas.
Incredible production value on that stuff, man. Like that.
Yeah.
It's weird. What happened is like Christians were crushing it when it came to VHS sales.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just crushed it, and even on the DVD with like VeggieTales and stuff like that, like Christians were just like on top of it. But then once everything went online, like it's like the Christians didn't know what to do.
Mm.
It's like they were like, well, what do we do? Like, you Focus on the Family right now could have a massive streaming platform.
Yeah.
And they could redo like all the McGee and Me stuff. They could redo all the animated. I mean, they do have like Adventures in Odyssey Club where you can listen to all the Adventures in Odyssey. But that's just radio stuff. They had actual VHS tapes and cartoons of the shows.
Oh wow!
And they could redo that. It would be huge.
Yeah.
But like I think for some reason, like once everything went to the internet, like Christians just lost track of like that there was an audience there, and a lot of that is because of like Lifeway bookstores. That was the main audience and the main way to get all that content into their hands.
Okay.
So all the distribution deals and stuff were like solidified through like Lifeway contracts.
Oh wow.
So then like when everything went online, I don't know whether or not like Lifeway had anything to do with like not allowing that to happen or whatnot. But like once Netflix started to do, stuff like that, just sort of like you get very few stuff, except, I mean, you did get Doug TenNaples' VeggieTales on Netflix, which is,
Okay.
I heard through the grapevine that there's more gospel in those than any of the other VeggieTales.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But all the Christians got mad because they changed the look of the character design, and we said Netflix is ruining our stuff, and then like we didn't even pay attention to like the theology on it. So
Sure.
I plan to go back and watch the new VeggieTales that Doug TenNaples did.
See, I didn't even ask him. I don't even remember asking him about that. Are those still on Netflix? He said
he did 100 episodes of VeggieTales
what?
that are just for Netflix. Yeah, he did 100 episodes in 4 years, and VeggieTales did 100 episodes in 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So like he did more episodes in 4 years, and like from what he told me is like there's a lot of gospel in it.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to go watch those then.
I'm gonna have to go watch it too. I didn't want to tell him that.
So then,
because I was one of the guys going, "Why did Netflix mess up our character design?"
What can you do?
I'm an idiot.
So we're here now in this day where everything is internet run. We're doing the show from the internet, and there's in my experience, there's always been kind of this teeter-totter sort of mentality with I'll just say evangelicals in general, or Christian homes that I grew up in, conservative homes, where certain things are bad. Like there are some homes where like just completely stay away from movies altogether. The world, these types of things are wrong. But as you said earlier, we need to, essentially take them over or create our own versions of these things. And to the point of what we were just talking about, where Christians had this massive VHS influence, do you think it's just that we missed the boat in terms of being too late to get to the platform, or do you think there has been an overall drop off in terms of like just Christians in general not be involved in this for whatever other reason?
I think we were just late. I think we were just late, and we weren't really doing much in the film industry in general. So, I mean, we had these VHS successes like Focus on the Family and VeggieTales. Like, yeah, it's underselling the success of VeggieTales. VeggieTales is the number 2 most successful cartoon franchise of all time, only being beaten by Pokemon.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Like that's how huge VeggieTales was,
right?
And there were whatever happened with VeggieTales. There were lawsuits and stuff, and Phil Vischer became a liberal SJW and all this other crazy stuff.
Sure.
But whatever happened in terms of like not seeing where things were going, I have no idea. I if I had to guess, I would argue that a lot of that was just because the Christian bookstores in like 90s, 2000s, 2010s were like so strong and powerful that I think that people just didn't think like we're making so much money on VHS tapes at Lifeway. Yeah. Like, why are we going to like try to move into different directions or whatever? Sure. And they never really thought about that. So I think probably was really just like, like Blockbuster's success.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're Blockbuster. You're not going to take it down. What are you talking about? $50 million. That's way too cheap.
Yeah.
Way too expensive. It's way too expensive.
Sure.
And I think that's sort of how like Lifeway felt. Like Lifeway did have a monopoly on the entire Christian bookstore industry.
Yes.
And the only people that there was Family Christian Bookstore, and there were a few others, but like nobody came close to what Lifeway had. And but that was even run by the Southern Baptist Convention. So, everything had to be in line with SBC theology for the most part. So very little Reform stuff. And then, when I did stuff, I was told that like the Christian movie audience has to be geared towards the Lifeway mom, right? Yeah. Like the Lifeway soccer mom. Right. So you see all these terrible Christian movies. It's not because of the movie theater, whether or not people go see it in the movie theaters. It was whether or not the mom would buy it at Lifeway bookstores.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
that's where you get the Christian genre that exists today. It's based on Hallmark movie audience.
Yeah, less maybe gospel and theology centered, and more just kind of generally wholesome, right? Like, is this safe for my kids to watch? And that's kind of what they were marketing to, you would say.
I mean, like, that's what they would say,
Yeah.
but I think it's more, does this appeal to women?
Okay. So really
That's just way
specifically
more
women.
straightforward. Yeah, it's way more specific than that.
Okay.
So, it's more specifically like the Lifeway women who were say, well, I can watch this movie with my kids. Right. So it's like not like a racy Hallmark movie.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But it's like the opposite of a racy Hallmark movie. It's a clean Hallmark movie that I can watch with my kids. And I think like that's defined because they're right. Like that's who shops at Lifeway is our Christian moms.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, but Lifeway doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Right.
So now there's some space.
But they're still making those movies.
Right.
You know, like, you know, so we had a conversation with somebody and they're like, well, they were like, well, you have to get the pastor on board for all the content you're making. You have to get pastors on board. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you don't need pastors on board for Star Wars and Marvel movies and all these. Like, they just go and see it.
Yeah.
You know, and then also with streaming companies, they watch it in the privacy of their home and they don't even tell people what they want. Right? Like, True. You only talk about something you've seen on Netflix when another Christian brother goes, hey, did you see this? And you go, yeah, I did. Right? like that. Like, but so people they're still watching it.
True.
And so like the whole model has changed. Like the Hallmark mom model just doesn't work anymore. It's just not what people, you know, you're not going to change conversation of a culture by appealing to, you know, women who still shop at Christian bookstores if they exist.
Yeah. Yeah. So then we see that then with regards to content in general, just kind of your own, I just want to hear from your mouth. What is your verdict of, let's just say right now, as you've looked at today and in the past, what's your general feeling about Christian content in general, be it movies or TV shows?
I don't like them.
Yeah. No, why? I know why, but I think I know why, but I want to hear why.
Well, I think they still aim to be evangelistic, which is weird because they're marketing Christian films to Hallmark moms, right? Lifeway moms, but they still try to be evangelistic, which is just a sort of redundancy that's not necessary. And then also too, because like art doesn't have to be explicitly evangelistic. It doesn't right. So like when you look at like God's creation, and you look at like Romans 1, right? You have general revelation and special revelation. Yeah. And art, the heavens and the earth and the animals and, you know, the oceans and the seas, all those sort of things. That's all general revelation. Right. It is not going to save anybody. Right. But that was how God displayed art, through general revelation. And then of course you have special revelation, which is art. It's a form of art, but it can't be copied or duplicated. But everybody tries to say, well, Christians, their art has to be more in line with the special revelation art, which you're never gonna have art that rivals the scriptures. Right. But everybody tries to at least put, you know, the sort of thing. But that's just not necessary. So stories matter to our culture. Like, stories are very important and critical to our culture. Hollywood knows how to tell stories that indoctrinate without being preachy.
Sure.
So we Christians haven't figured that out yet. So
yeah. Well, and then do you think then that's just a matter of not enough talent? Well, actually, before I go back, first of all, I do agree with you. I think most of the Christian movies that I've seen that are like specifically Christian are terrible. I think like the big budget movies that I saw as a junior high student, big budget is relative, but you know, you'd see like the Omega Code and Megiddo and like all these TBN, you know, abominations that would come out, and then even Left Behind. And that was a fairly successful franchise, and you know, and they had a name, you know, they had Nicolas Cage, you know, he'll do anything, right? But they just, it's still, they still are terrible. They're still bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like the only, but you think about this and you think about art in general, right? It's that throughout the ages, Christian art has been and still is considered, even by secularists, as some of the greatest artwork of all time. You know, you look at some of the paintings that have been done over the years in the Sistine Chapel and just things like this.
Have you been to the Musical Instrument Museum in Scottsdale?
I have. They are one of my
Yeah.
customers. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I mean, like if you go there,
Yeah.
like 95% of all the I won't be too mean because you're one of your customers, but 95% of all the musical instruments there are just like a wood and a string.
Yeah.
And it's just like one note stuff, and then
Right.
you get to like the it's for those that haven't been, it's categorized by countries and time.
Right.
And so once you get to the point where Christianity takes off, like you see that like music is just explodes. Like you have different notes, you have pianos,
Yeah.
versus, and then you have like these tribes in Africa that are still around today that haven't been reached by the gospel, and they're still plucking a string on a stick for music, right? Like so like you see that like art is always better with a Christian worldview, but when you just try to like define art towards like a very specific weird Christian niche, like it just remains in this weird category. But
Yeah.
I actually firmly believe that like a lot of that is on purpose. So because I think
talk about that. Yeah.
I think Hollywood doesn't want the secular industry, the Christian industry, to compete with their box office. So I mean, we just saw that Sony bought PureFlix, right? Like, so Sony now owns PureFlix.
I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah. So that Sony bought PureFlix, and yeah, you have to be a fool to think that Sony. This is the same Sony that's pushing like LGBT stuff in Last of Us 2, right? Like, it's the exact same Sony,
Sure.
and they just bought PureFlix. And so, you have to say, well, what are they going to do? Because like that, they're not going to keep the PureFlix money in a separate bank account, right? Like that's just not how any business or organization works. So all the profits from Christians are going to be funded through Sony and then used for, more SJW, cultural Marxist, homosexual stuff, right?
Right.
So that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah. So then the question then is, what is the solution, right? And I want to bring this
Loor.
Sure, right. There you go. Question. Yeah, so we're looking at all of this stuff. We've got we've got people consuming media from their homes more than ever now. I remember you telling me why you were, part of the reason you were moving is to accept, this particular position and you were going to, be a part of starting this. And so why is right now the right time, and how does Loor fit into this whole mindset of taking over and taking dominion, and what does it need to do to be successful?
So there's several questions you just asked.
Sure.
So the first thing is one, realizing that there's 8 people in the United States that decide what it is you're going to watch on Netflix or whatever streaming service you have. There's 8 people. And so the way it works now is essentially you pay Netflix $20 a month or whatever. And then Netflix takes all the money of all the subscribers and they decide what you're going to watch next, what new show are they going to greenlight, whatever. But what Loor is going to do is we're going to take the studios out of it and say, well, what if you could spend your subscription every month and then determine what new content gets made? So instead of just paying your subscription to Netflix and sort of hoping for the best, that they might give you something you enjoy, you actually get to use your subscription to fund the content that gets made.
Okay.
So it's a mixture of Kickstarter and Netflix is really the
interesting.
Yeah.
So then are you only going to have as much content as money comes in? Like if there's a period where there's like a dry
you can
spell?
only have as much content as money comes in.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, this is true, but I mean, are we going to see like a period where nothing's being produced by Loor or are you going to market it kind of like Kickstarter where you're like, okay, I go to the Loor page?
we've already greenlit 2 projects, and then
Okay.
there's a lot of Christian content that just doesn't have a place to go. So there'll be a library.
Yeah.
It won't be big, but I think once people get started and they can figure out sort of like this is something worth investing in, like because it's not a lot now, but it will grow, obviously, right? So, but I
Yeah.
think it'll be very easy for people to see why they should sort of spend some money on a decent subscription service that's small, and then
Yeah.
watch it grow. They'll be able to because they'll be helping it grow, right?
Sure.
So it's like Twitch, right? Like your money has power on Twitch,
Right.
right? Like so people can subscribe to you and pay you per month, right? Like there's power to your money. Whereas
Yeah.
Netflix, you don't really have any power. Like
Sure.
you just hope they make something decent that you can watch
Yeah.
with your family too. So that's sort of like the thing. The other thing is just to be straight MTV with it. Like just to go in and just say we don't care about any of the rules of Christian television, and there are none.
Yeah.
And we hate all the ones that do exist, and just go in there and just make your own thing. And because we're not beholden to anybody. So I think like though just having that same philosophy that we use to start Apologia is just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so that'll be really interesting. It's going to be offensive to a lot of Christians. I think when they see it, they're going to be like, "Is that it? Can that even be a Christian TV show?" And it's like, "Yeah, that can be a Christian TV show." So that'll be a shock, but I'm excited to sort of see how that plays out. It'll be really great.
So what is your like official role in this? Like, are you the CEO? Are you the co-founder?
Well, my official title is a chief content officer.
Okay.
So I pretty much decide what content's going to go on the platform, essentially.
Gotcha.
And so we have a CEO, we have a chief technology officer who's doing the development on the website back end, and then we have Jason Farley, who is a genius, and he's writing scripts for us, and he's also doing outreach to artists and people within the Hollywood industry because he's familiar with the Hollywood industry.
Okay.
And so there's that. And then we have John Speed, who worked with me on Babies Are Murdered here. And he's sort of reaching out to ministry organizations and sort of trying to get them on board, doing conferences, stuff like that sort of thing. So that's sort of how our roles break down. Yeah.
Interesting. So then I probably skipped over this, but what was the genesis of this? How did this come together initially?
The genesis of it was Babies Are Still Murdered Here was canceled on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And I was like, well, what do Christian filmmakers do? Like, well, one, Apologia wasn't making any money on Babies Are Still Murdered Here on Prime. Like Prime doesn't pay any money. Mm-hmm. So Amazon Prime was paying like maybe like 5 cents for every 1,000 minutes watched, right?
Yeah.
That's insane. Like you can't budget a movie and say, well, my profit's going to come on Amazon Prime. For me, it felt like, well, there's a real problem here. If your movie does get on Amazon Prime, there's nothing you can do to make money from it. So like, what is the way a Christian filmmaker can make money? And then, and so like, that's sort of going around with this idea. And that's when we got connected I told it to John Speed, and he connected us with Maceo, and Maceo is now our CEO, but he does like a lot of like venture capitalist investment brokerage. So like that sort of like, he's in that world, and he's a Christian guy. He used to do street evangelism, like that sort of guy, and now he does the venture capitalist stuff. And so, so just sort of like and then he thought it was a great idea, and then from there, like everything else sort of panned out to where we're in active content development and website development now. So it's early.
Yeah,
it's early, but you got to start somewhere. So,
well, and so what's the response been so far? Because you guys have had a pretty targeted ad campaign, I would say, so far with some of the stuff you put out. And what's the thought process behind that? What are you trying to? You're trying to obviously touch a little bit of a nerve, and so.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that nerve is hidden.
No, not at all.
I think you're how old are you, Elliot? 35, 30?
30. Oh my gosh, 38 now.
38. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So me and you are about the same age. So and we watch content all the time. We watch all like Breaking Bad, like all these sort of like we watch all this sort of stuff. Yeah. And so there's nobody within our like age group, male, like that. There's not Christian content being made for them,
Right.
because everybody's still saying, "Oh, Hallmark movies, like that's what a Christian movie is."
Yeah.
And so our goal is uh, to make as much noise as possible and to
Mm-hmm.
be as loud as possible, and angry as possible. And then that way, the people that hate our guts will advertise for us.
Yeah.
So like that's essentially the plan, because we're coming against like massive Goliaths, right?
Yeah.
Like PureFlix might have been easy to take down, if we were planning on taking it down, which not. But I'm saying like that would have been an easy target, but then Sony bought them,
Mm.
right? So now it's like you're not going to take them down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not going to take down Netflix. You're not going to take down all these. So the only other option is to make content that they're not going to make.
Right.
Make stuff that Daily Wire is not going to make. Like make these sort of shows and programs that nobody is going to touch with a 10-foot pole.
Sure.
And then that's gonna be the fun stuff too. So that's gonna be fun to see the reactions of that sort of stuff. So
yeah, well, and you're a guy that's always had his finger on the pulse when it comes to what's trending and what's going on in society. And I don't think it's any secret to say that people have a massive distrust right now of big media. They've kind of shown their hand even more explicitly than ever with this last election and banning people and trying to silence people, and every massive streaming operation is out there supporting every wicked thing imaginable. But you're also now starting to see the flip side, and I'll use the Babylon Bee as what I feel is like almost a perfect example of how a Christian satire site that was making for a while specifically Christian jokes is now being retweeted by Elon Musk, and you're like, and you're like, so then the way has been shown that this is possible even with non-believers, because there's people that are sympathetic and are sick of all this other garbage and just want another voice that you see now. You mentioned the Daily Wire. I wanted to kind of bring that up a little bit, but then what's your overall feeling about opportunity right now? Do you feel like this is it? This is our opportunity to get in while the iron's hot, or are you kind of seeing that this is going to probably take a while?
Well, I think what we're doing is going to take a while.
Yeah.
So there's no I mean, obviously we're going as fast as we can, and
sure,
that just depends on investor money, really, is how fast we can go.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like the Daily Wire's video content, or VidAngel, or PureFlix, really. I don't feel like they're competitors, because what we're doing in terms of like the fundraising model really thrives well when you have a giant demand for that sort of content.
Yeah.
Right. So the more Christian content, conservative content, whatever, is around, like the better it is for us. So it's like, it doesn't hurt. Like, like one of the things you learn pretty quickly when you're talking like venture capitalists is like, they want to know if there's competition that'll crush you. But if there is no competition, they don't think that there's a market or a demand for your product. Right. So the more that there is, with everybody else, like the better it is. And like you want like competition, because that keeps prices down. It helps, all this other stuff. So it's not really a thing for us. So it's actually good, because there's just nothing there.
Sure.
So the more that there is, the better. So
what kind of I guess then what overall kind of content can we expect from Loor when you guys start pumping out stuff?
I'm trying to answer this question.
I know. You told me you couldn't be too specific.
Yeah,
you kind of mentioned TV shows and TV shows that might rub some Christians wrong. You mean there might be shows with swearing? You mean there might like what?
No.
What kind of parameters are we talking about?
I would just say, man, like I would say that it's going to be content for a majority male audience. So that's going to be, and not like a male who likes porn audience.
Yeah, right.
but it's going to be edgy. Like you can be really edgy and not cuss.
Sure.
Like so I would definitely say in that, around that vein. I would say maybe like let's say like Adult Swim, sort of like that sort of style, but like from a Christian perspective. So like that's probably where we just like, what would comic book guys like to watch?
Sure.
Christian people who are into Marvel and Star Wars and comic books and like Adult Swim, all the, you know, all this sort of stuff, like that really just hitting like that core stuff.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason a lot of Christians aren't going to like it is because it's not going to be evangelistic with a gospel presentation at the end of it.
Right.
I think like that's what people expect when you say, "Oh, we're Christian media." It's like, well, no, you know, or like, you know, I think one of the things we learned from like our time at Apologia is you can have Christian adult content, right? Like there are episodes of Apologia Radio you don't want to listen to with your kids.
Sure.
Right. And like, so just like dealing with those subject matters, whether it's through satire or whatever, like it's still Christian content, but it's not necessarily for kids.
Sure.
And so that'll be really interesting because we've ingrained in people this mentality that Christian content has to be suitable for all ages, but it doesn't, and it shouldn't be, especially if you're, you know, we like to say it's like if the Old Testament prophets made movies mocking the culture, like what would that be, right?
Sure.
Like, you know, like where's your like where's your like your movie and you know, like, well, where's your movie where you have a transgender person who wants to detransition and like regrets everything like they've done?
Sure. Yeah.
Like where are those? Like PureFlix is never going to give you that.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
like where's like the lesbian rom-com where the lesbian falls in love with a man and realizes she's not gay after all? Like, right,
yeah.
like what? Like where are those filmed? Like those are great stories. Those would be great stories.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the sort of stuff that like it's not going to play well to a kids audience.
Sure.
And it's not going to play well in Christian world either. And it's not going to play well in Daily Wire.
Yeah.
But those are all like really valid like stories and stuff that Christians can tell. You know, just as an example of just like sort of like, well, what is like adult Christian content like? That's a good one.
Well, and that's a good question, because to be honest, I can't think of anything that I've seen that falls into any of that. You know what I mean? Almost everything that I mean, the closest I can get to. Yeah, which is why why you're kind of kicking the door down.
Right,
I mean, I consider the original, well, it's not the original. The Charlton Heston Ben-Hur to me is one of the greatest, like what I would consider a Christian film. But the movie and the story is what takes center place, with, you know, the focus on the resurrection at the end. And it's kind of like, oh, Christ is a part of this story. And it's like really, really powerful. But you have this whole other amazing adventure, if you want to call it that. That's like, again, secularists and, you know, worldly people can't but say this is great. This is great storytelling, regardless of what they believe. And I think for myself, right, you know, we're drawn, human beings are drawn to things that are spectacular and that are well done. Not all of us all the time, but I think the fact that there has been such a lack of good Christian movies has made it easy for Christians to compromise, easier, I should say, to compromise. Oh no!
That was sitting there for an hour.
Were you just shaking it up the whole time?
No, I didn't.
At least it wasn't a smoke alarm. You're not going to burn your home down.
Honey, can you give me something to clean up?
Well, both our wives are going to make cameos here.
Yeah, right? I don't know. That was... that's the weirdest thing.
Somebody, one of our listeners said, imagine Christian Rick and Morty.
I'm live right now, but can you give me... Thank you. It was sitting there for an hour. I didn't do anything. I just opened it.
That's good. It makes
that's
for
crazy.
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. It's live. It's raw. It's authentic. See? Other ministries would cut this out right now.
That's right. I know. Ligonier never. They would never have it.
Never. Could you imagine R.C. Sproul just like having a beer explode in his face on the live stream? That would not. This wasn't even a beer, by the way. This is I don't know what this is. It's like one of those organic sodas.
Oh, it's like flavored sparkly drink.
Something. I've never had.
Yeah. So
it's all right.
Yeah, you can never substitute soda, even though soda kills us. But they, So getting into that, it's just like, well, there's all this. You know, even reading through scripture, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to say something that's going to maybe bother some people. So like, I'm not advocating for this. In fact, I regret ever watching Game of Thrones, if I'm going to be honest. But the thing that people take away from that is that the production value in that is insane. Like, it's so well done in that respect. But if you can imagine taking that production value and people that can do that to even a story like Judges, you would have something that would be like I think undeniably amazing to watch, and or even the story of David, right? And that
right.
So
but
it's like,
you're not going to get that content when you market to Hallmark moms.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. And I'm
Right.
like, well, where's the there's like these incredible biblical stories that are in there that are violent, that are adults, but we never see, like, the closest thing I've seen to anybody. Remember that Bible movie that came out like 6 years ago, and I think it was like a TBN production, but they just called it The Bible, and it had all these effects and everything, and basically they like totally glossed over the whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing. They had the two angels walking through, and they were like ninjas, and they were like chopping people up. It was so corny.
I never saw that.
Oh, dude, they didn't even talk about like the sin of homosexuality at all.
Of course not.
They were like, oh, and they were rude, and they weren't welcoming, and all the bull crap,
right.
So it's just like, dude, why don't you could just make this, just literally make it word for word. And like I think people and filmmakers in general, maybe I don't know if this is the experience or not. Because I hope that people see Loor and those that are maybe just afraid, and maybe I'm overselling it here, but those who are potentially afraid that, hey, I can't make this because I'm going to be blacklisted from Hollywood, or this is going to happen to me, can actually see that. And you know what? No, I actually can take something that ruffles the feathers and do it and do it to the glory of God.
Yeah, one of our first productions is being done by a canceled artist who don't want to put their name on it. So,
wow. Okay.
So that market exists, man.
Yeah.
So like there are Christians in Hollywood that are at the very high levels and the core depths. That are like, I think it's time for me to drive an Uber.
Yeah,
because I'm just not. Yeah, it's like go to hell or drive an Uber. Like, those are my options at this moment.
Yeah,
and we've talked to them, and so like there's a moral responsibility really just to create a sort of sandbox where, because cancel culture doesn't exist if someone else will hire you.
It's true.
Right? Like it's just like, if someone else will hire you, it's no big deal. It's just like finding another job.
Yeah.
But if like the whole fast food industry got together and said, well, once you're fired from McDonald's, like you can't work at any fast food restaurant again, like that's where you have a problem.
Sure.
And that's sort of what Hollywood has done, where they've created this sort of like monopoly on filmmaking. And so, but that won't last forever. So
yeah. Well, and if you don't mind, I just want to throw out a couple of shout outs to somebody. So Mafuki wrote earlier today, he said, thanks for reminding me about this interview. Marcus was one of the main guys who challenged me to start using social media and Twitch better. So you've had an influence there. Somebody did ask about the next week. It said, what if next week, actually it was my beautiful wife that asked, let me go back, and she said, I wonder if doing next week on Twitch, she didn't phrase this very well, sorry, but she was asking about, like, so we're on Twitch right now. My audience is very, very small, and I'm still figuring out what I'm doing, if I'm being 100% honest with you. But like a show like next week, how do you think that would have done on Twitch? Or what about using platforms like Twitch?
Well, I think Twitch would have probably been really good for next week.
Yeah.
I don't think it existed very well. So I don't think Twitch was really like at the forefront when we were doing it.
Sure.
So when was that? Like 2017 or 18?
Yeah.
It might have been around. Twitch might have been around then, but I don't think it was. I don't even really think it was much of a thing or a thought, really. And at the time, people were only using Twitch for video games, and so that's sort of like the only. But now people use it for more than that. But
definitely,
at the time, it was only for video games. So
yeah, no, it's definitely blown up, especially since COVID, because so many people are just like, well, I'm stuck at home. We're going to start streaming, for better or for worse. But that's where we are.
Somebody says Twitch existed in 2011.
Yeah, we didn't get on that one.
But that was called Justin TV back then, wasn't it? Like it wasn't the same.
I don't know.
because I used to use Justin.tv to watch like Fox News and CNN because there was
Oh, I
always
know.
someone on Justin TV that was like broadcasting
That was
Fox.
illegally
If you
streaming
didn't
it.
have
Yeah.
cable. Yeah. And like the Super Bowl and like all this other stuff that was you could watch on Justin TV.
That's right, dude. I remember Justin TV.
Yeah,
Now that you said that.
that's what Twitch was. And then it got bought and then it became Twitch. But
Wow.
so yeah, Justin TV was before. Was it that long ago? Man. Wow.
Yeah, Yoshi.
So I don't know. Maybe we just weren't forward thinking enough and we weren't using Twitch, when next week was around. But I don't think it was. I think it was very, very limited to video games around the time. Like it just wasn't part of mainstream culture.
No, I don't think Twitch really started to get big until like 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's just exploded. And now they don't know. They don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So then, like, and I know it's getting later here with your vision going forward with Loor, with media in general. Kind of what is your charge to Christians? What if there's somebody listening to this or somebody that's going to listen to this and they're going to say, you know what? I really resonate with what Marcus is saying. I want to do something. What's your advice to a future Christian content creator?
Well, if you're a content creator, you can go to Loor.tv and there's a creator sign up. Okay. And if you have an idea for a film or a TV show or whatever, you can pitch that on the content creator side, especially if you're established and you've done stuff in the industry. But also, if you're an investor and Christians want to put their money in something that's really going to fight the culture, like you can go to Loor.tv and sign up as an investor too. And that'll really that's like the main thing right now, just capital.
Yeah.
That's the main thing for any business, right? Is capital. But that's the thing, is just going to Loor TV and you can invest with whether you're go to investment or you can be a creator. And then also if you just want to get updates on what we're doing and when we send it out, you can go to the subscriber. You can join the subscriber database, and then that way you can get updates as to like when we launch or whatever. So
cool, man. Well, wonderful, Marcus. Thanks so much for coming on, brother. I appreciate it. You got anything else you want to shout out or any other advice you want to give? We didn't get a lot of questions, so.
No, man. I think I just go to Loor.tv and sign up. Just do it.
Awesome.
Whether you're an investor, content creator, or a streamer, just go ahead and sign up and, and tell others about what we're doing and, get excited about it, get others excited about it too.
Real quick question. What's the next piece of content we can expect from Loor? When do you think we'll see another trailer? Do you think when will we see something more?
Like a trailer?
Yeah, something. I mean,
like actual content we're launching?
Yeah.
I would hope by June.
Oh, okay. So pretty quick.
I would hope so.
Relative.
I would hope so, maybe if I had to. I mean, that's not a hard date at all.
Okay.
but boy, I'll say like filming on some of the stuff. It will start maybe February, and there might be some behind the scenes stuff.
Okay.
That happen maybe hopefully around that time. So cool. I think but as far as like actual content launches, maybe later this year. So.
Cool. And where can people follow you on Twitter?
I'm King Ginger. I am KINGGINGER.
Perfect. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me, dude. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man.
And being a great guest. It's fun to catch up with you on this stuff.
Awesome, man. I miss you guys.
I miss you too, bro. You guys are coming down.
Are y'all singing Psalms yet at Apologia?
Hey, come on. Every once in a while. I'm working. I saw your post. You're like, dude, oh, it's so nice to sing Psalms.
We sing Psalms. We sing Psalms here, and man, it is hard, man. It is I get why a lot of churches don't do it, but it really makes you focus and like have to study hard to worship, which is kind of cool. But
yeah, do you know about Psalms and Suds? Were you here for that?
No, he started that after I left.
No.
So
well, that Gabe is doing that monthly. So if you come back, you got to come back.
I would have to try to come back at a time when they're doing Psalms.
He started singing Doug Wilson's song that he wrote, the Forever Amen. Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was
Did Doug write that song?
He wrote it, apparently.
I had no idea he wrote that song.
No, that's pretty cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. All right, brother. Hey, tell Laura I said hello. Give her my love.
All right, man.
All right, brother. You take care.
All right,
Peace
bye.
out.